In Shazam, computer-generated imagery, or CGI, is used along with live-action scenes to construct the magic of the characters, their suits and powers, and the world around them. In order to combine CGI with real footage, motion tracking is needed to layer virtual elements with real-life elements. Motion tracking, which is a fundamental part of CGI, uses sensors to determine the precise movement of a camera in space, as well as complex object movements such as walking and facial expressions. In optical motion tracking, a subject is covered with active, blinking, or passive high-contrast markers for a motion tracking camera to capture. These cameras then track the points frame by frame and send the data to a computer, which takes the captured points and creates a wireframe, which is a virtual shape made up of vertices, edges, and faces. During the production of Shazam, actors wore passive motion capture suits, which are primarily gray and black, in order to play as seven sin monsters. Since these colors contrast very sharply with each other, the tracking cameras are able to track the motion of each contrasted area throughout time and send the actor's position to computers, which gathers the data and creates a virtual three-dimensional wireframe. The computers then take each point on the wireframe, map it to the corresponding point on a three-dimensional model created by visual effects artists, and render the motion of the model frame by frame. When this model is placed over the motion capture suit in the footage, the model moves the same way as the original actor due to the corresponding points moving in the same way across every frame. This is used throughout the movie to create characters and objects that would be impossible to create in real life.
In addition to motion tracking, CGI requires the use of 3D modeling and animation. This process begins with 3D artists, who, along with the help of explosive experts, puppeteers, and makeup artists, create realistic-looking virtual models of characters, set features, and landscapes. These models are first designed as wireframes, meaning that they only contain the underlying structure of the object without the detail. The material, which contains information such as texture and color, is then added around the wireframe in order to turn it into a realistic-looking object. After the material is applied, lighting is added to the model in layers to help it blend into the rest of the scene. All these carefully detailed and intricate steps can be seen in Shazam and Savannah's power of lightning. The lightning passed from within their suits and hands was first created as a wireframe with the right size, shape, and neon material. Later on, the 3D artists place the model into the scene and match its lighting with the scene, as well as animate it throughout each frame to create motion. The use of special effects and computer animation within the movie Shazam make it possible to make the superpowers of Shazam, his family, and the Seven Sins come to life, and require physical and animated parts to make them work efficiently.
When Billy Batson transforms into Shazam, he turns from a 135-pound 14-year-old boy into a 220-pound fully grown man. In order for a human to grow such a large amount, cells will need to undergo mitosis and rapid cell division to obtain the increase in number of human cells in the body. Normally, this process takes many years of cell reproduction in order to achieve, but in the movie, Billy grows in an impossibly fast time period of about half a second. Based off of a research project by Ron Milo and Ron Sender at the Weizmann Institute of Science in Israel, and Shai Fuchs at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, Canada, we can see that there are approximately 37.2 trillion cells in the average 20 to 30-year-old male body, split into these categories. If we take in the correlation of Billy's 14-year-old body's weight, we can use an equation by illustrative mathematics to approximate that his 14-year-old body has 22.8 trillion cells, while his Shazam adult body has approximately 37.2 trillion cells. In Figure 1, we calculated the approximate number of cells according to the research data for his 14-year-old body. And in Figure 2, we calculated the cells in his Shazam body. Next, we found the theoretical time for cell reproduction, taking in the fact that human body cells take on average 24 hours to complete the cell cycle, with interphase and mitosis, and assuming that every cell is constantly going through the cell cycle.
We calculated the hours by starting with the base number of cells in Billy's 14-year-old body for one type of cell. For this example, we will use epidermal cells, which are 114 billion cells, multiplied by 2 to the power of x to represent each cell dividing into two cells at the same time, which equaled our total amount of cells at the end of dividing, the cells of his Shazam body, which equaled 186 billion. This resulted in a theoretical division of 0.71 hours, or roughly 2,500 seconds. When we compared this time to the time it took for Billy Batson to transform into Shazam in the movie, we found out the transformation in the movie took approximately 10 frames, or about 0.42 seconds. This meant the Billy Batson transformation into Shazam is not accurate according to theoretical human growth time, as the actual time to grow up into a larger body was 6,100 times slower than what was depicted in the movie.
In the movie, there are a lot of instances of Shazam flying and jumping, doing feats that no normal human could do. Shazam's superhuman abilities allow him to jump tall buildings and fly. We will now discuss Shazam's ability of jumping. In the scene shown, Shazam bounds up and lands on approximately the 22nd floor of a building, all within 1.5 seconds. Estimating the height of a floor to be on average 4.3 meters, we can calculate the net displacement to be 95 meters upwards. Since this is all within 1.5 seconds, his maximum speed within the 1.5 seconds must be at least 63 meters per second, which is around the speed of a human in free fall skydiving. When I jump, there are two forces that act on me: the force of air resistance, also known as drag force, and the force of gravity. You can calculate the drag force on Shazam as he jumps at this velocity, 63 meters per second. The average drag coefficient of a person is around 0.7. The density is about 1.23 kilograms per cubic meter of air in normal conditions. Finally, the area of a person's body topographically, so from the top, is approximately 0.05 square meters. As the equation for the drag force is shown here, then the force of air resistance is approximately 64 newtons. This is in fact negligible compared to the force of gravity, which is mass times the gravitational acceleration. Since Shazam weighs about 220 pounds, this is about 100 kilograms, as mentioned before. So the force of gravity is about 980 newtons for him. As a result, the acceleration downwards for Shazam is around 10 meters per second squared. Thus, the 63 meters per second of velocity must dissipate after around 63 over 10 equals 6.3 seconds. Since by the end of the clip, he is clearly falling downwards, the speed dissipated after only about 1 second. So there is some discrepancy in the portrayal of Shazam's jumping in the movie.
Shazam wears a suit that is both bulletproof and fireproof. A common type of material that satisfies these requirements is Kevlar. Kevlar is a fiber that is considered an aromatic polyamide, which consists of molecules that form long, intricately strung chains. The process of creating Kevlar involves the condensation reaction of an amine and acid chloride. These chains are relatively rigid and form mostly planar sheets, which are similar to silk protein because of their para-orientation of benzene rings. The Kevlar chains are bound together by hydrogen bonds, one of the strongest molecular bonds. This gives it a very high tensile strength, making it bulletproof. The high ratio of carbon to hydrogen atoms gives it the property of low flammability. These sheets are then stacked radically to increase the overall strength of the fiber. We can also examine the chemistry of Billy's brain through his intricate understanding of languages, fighting, battle strategies, and logic. The neurotransmitter acetylcholine is responsible for his fighting skills and battle strategies. When it is stimulated with the correct receptors, it releases its stores onto the waiting neurons. Acetylcholine increases Billy's attention to detail and also activates his muscles. It improves his reaction and retaliation time against enemies. Billy has high levels of norepinephrine as well. This chemical, along with the hormone adrenaline, triggers his fight or flight response. The levels of dopamine in Billy's system increase as well because of his strong willpower. Shazam has the insatiable need to persevere no matter the situation, and higher levels of dopamine will speed up that internal drive. The release of this molecule in Billy's system is linked to behavior reinforcement and forming lifelong habits.
Shazam is considered as a power-trained athlete. Studies have shown that these athletes have 25 to 33% higher maximal voluntary muscle contraction force and maximal rate of force development. Shazam can be associated with power-trained athletes because his powers that require maximum energy and strength exertion during performance. Muscle fibers play an important role in fatigability of individuals. Having type 1 fibers allows Shazam to be more fatigue resistant. Type 1 fibers contain a higher amount of oxidative enzymes which favor aerobic metabolism and fatigue resistance. For example, in the study done by Hamada and others, 72% of individuals with more type 2 fibers experience a greater decrease in force during repeated maximal voluntary isometric contractions in the quadriceps. Only 39% of individuals with type 1 fibers experience the fatigue. Shazam is likely to have a larger percentage of type 1 muscle fibers as he rarely experiences fatigue while in action.